It's a mailbag episode. We got a question about Anfernee Simons' future. I play a little fake GM, and we're talking halftime acts. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazer reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and now also on YouTube. If you're listening to the show and you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do so. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, hit the button. Make the show your first listen every single day, free, wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, 5 days a week, the only daily Trailblazers podcast. We're cranking them out. We're having a lot of fun, so come join the show. Make it part of your daily routine. I truly appreciate you if you join me along the journey. Today's episode is a mailbag episode. We do this each and every week, answering listener-submitted questions all episode long. If you want to get involved in a future one, there's two ways to do it. Tweet at me, at Mike G. Rich on Twitter. Just send me a tweet whenever you're thinking of it, or watch my Twitter feeds. Typically, the day of the show, I will send out a tweet soliciting questions. Respond to that tweet, I'll get you in the show, or I'll save your question for a future show. Same deal for the email address, but just an option if you don't tweet or if you're not a Twitter user. Locked On Blazers Pod is the address. That's lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Send me a question, send me a query, send me a thought, and I'll do my best to get you in the show or save it for a future show. As you will see in this episode, I got some old questions that I'm bringing back to life that have kind of been hanging around in the inbox for a little while. So, like I said, it's a lot of fun. We do this every week. So without further ado, let us get into the mailbag. Our first question comes from a variety of people, from listener Casey, from listener Cal, from listener Dr. J, who all asked some version of the same question. And quite frankly, to me, this is the biggest question facing the Trailblazers right now. And this is using sort of Casey's language, but the other questions were pretty similar. Casey asks, should we apply the lessons learned from the Dame and CJ tenure and move on from Ant now, and find a better fit next to Dame? Dr. J asks, does it matter if we have Dame, CJ, and Norm versus Dame, Ant, and Norm in terms of offense and defense? I think that's kind of, in many ways, it's the biggest question of the last week, is like, Anfernee Simons looks like a hooper, capital H, multiple O's, like 6 O's in there. Hooper. Dude can play. He can really play. He can really score. He's shown some ability to do more than just score with he's becoming a better playmaker, looking more like that point guard of the future we were promised unfairly to Anfernee Simons, quite frankly, 3 years ago. But he's looking like it right now. Dude's 22 years old and some change, and he's looking like that guy. He should be a college senior. People don't stay in college 4 years anymore, so it's not like he should still be in college. He should be in his third year in the league, maybe not second. Should be a one and done guy, right? So, sort of was anyways. But like, baller, absolute baller. Like, let's not get it twisted. He's been really good. And this comes on the heels of a really tough December where Ant has just totally turned it around. And because he's totally turned it around, he's had this just bonkers 5 games in January. He's averaging almost 28 points per game and more than 6 assists. It's like, okay, this dude can hoop. What do you do with that? And part of what you do with that is you're thinking about the Blazers and you said how do you build around Damian Lillard? They've kind of failed to really build a true contender around Damian Lillard over his first decade with the team. Can you maximize over the next 2-3 years what you do with Dame? And if you're saying, okay, they got to move on from CJ, replacing CJ with another guard under 6'3" who's not a good defensive player and his best skill is scoring, and the best skill is scoring with the ball in his hands, isn't that the same thing? Like, that's what Dr. J and that's what Casey and that's what Cal are all asking. Like, isn't this the same song and dance? And I will say several. I have several thoughts on this. One, if you pay, I think every time is going to get somewhere between like $17 and $22 million on the open market. I think 22 is really on the high end. I think he makes Norman Powell, Evan Fournier, Gary Trent Jr. money. I think he makes $19 million. I think that's pretty reasonable, but it's my best guess. There's not a ton of teams to offer him, like a big poison pill contract, because nobody's going to have, not too many teams are going to have cap space. But even the ones that, it only takes one, and it's like, if you're Detroit, you offer Anfernee Simons a whole bunch of money and maybe end up with him. It'd be great. That's a great deal. It was a great get. You'd be really happy to have him paired with Cade Cunningham, with all due respect to Killian Hayes. So like the big difference between Ant making 20 million is that he's not making 30 million, and CJ at 30 million, that max contract, not quite able to be there, makes his contract much more onerous. If CJ was making 20 million, I would say, don't get rid of him, like figure it out, because you have this extra 10 million bucks laying around. So some of it is just like, if Ant is cheaper and you think that he's relatively comparable to the production that CJ gave you, that's already a bonus on his side. Two, it's the other parts of the roster. If the Blazers have, just pairing Dame and CJ together didn't prove to be super fruitful, but they also made a Western Conference final. They were like, they won 50 games on two separate occasions. Like, it's a pretty good basketball team. They had their flaws without a doubt, but like, I don't think you cannot, like capital C cannot, build a good team with two smaller score first guards. It's just it matters so much more what you have around them. And the Blazers just need more size and more athleticism around them. So if you commit to Ant, you have to commit to getting bigger on the wings, bigger at 3, bigger at 4, a whole bunch of forwards, a whole bunch of athletes. You probably need a really solid defensive center in there too. Not that Jusuf Nurkic isn't that, but you would need to continue to have that, right? You can't sacrifice defense at any of the other spots. I kind of think of like what Minnesota has done with Josh Okogie and Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt. It's just like, you send just a whole bunch of arms and a whole bunch of length at people every night. And that kind of makes up for the D'Angelo Russells. It makes up for maybe when Cat isn't as playing as good a defense, although he's taking steps forward. Like you make the puzzle pieces fit. So I don't think the lesson is the same, because if you're not giving Anfernee Simons a max contract, it's a little bit different. But I will admit that it's very similar, and it feels like you're headed in the same spot. And we're headed back to a similar spot. And I'll agree with that. I'll agree that maybe the Blazers wouldn't necessarily have learned their lesson if they say, okay, Dame and Ant is the backcourt of the future, as opposed to Dame and CJ. That's going to feel really similar and probably pretty stupid, right? But saving a little bit of money, prioritizing the roster, accepting that, not doing the freaking Pokemon catch every 6'3" guard you possibly can, Neil Olshey approach of the last 18 months. Like Ben McLemore, good. Norman Powell, good. Not the right size and shape for the rest of the roster. It is what it is. But I also think you can't let Ant walk. Like, you can't let him walk. You can't punt on him and say, Dame, CJ, Norm, whatever, the future. That's like obviously a non-starter. Not going to work. You got it. If you don't trade him at the trade deadline, you got to have him on the team. So then that's sort of the original question that was posed by Casey, is like, do you sell high on Ant right now? For me, I don't. Like, I'm not looking to do that, but I will go into if I'm, given the keys, given the cell phone, or maybe it's a landline. It's a cell phone, but I'm imagining for myself, it's a landline, and I'm wrapping the cord around my finger and spinning around the desk chair. If I'm giving that long cord and I'm spinning around my desk chair, I'm fielding calls on Ant. Like, I'm figuring out what his trade value is, because if his trade value has skyrocketed, if there's a team that's fallen in love, and it's like, these are just names that aren't going to happen, but it's like Pascal Siakam is available all of a sudden. Yeah, yes, go do that right away. 6'9" all-star who can handle and score and defend. Yes, go do it. You don't rule it out. So, like, he hasn't played himself into untouchable territory. He's played himself into very valuable territory, and very valuable might look similar. And I can understand why there's some trepidation about that. I think the sort of bottom line is that no, there's not much difference between Dame Ant Norm versus Dame CJ Norm. But the difference is, if you don't pay Anfernee Simons $30 million a year. If you don't give him a full max contract, it's not the same thing. You're paying him starter money as opposed to star money, and then you can build around the margins a little bit easier. Still going to have an expensive roster, still not going to work, but I think the financial commitment alone is enough to say it's worth it. Anfernee Simons isn't going to command a max contract. He's a very good basketball player. He might end up outplaying, if he gets 4 for 75, he might end up outplaying 4 for 75. I know it's 5 games, and I know I was kind of down on him in December, but the little stuff growth when the ball's really been in his hands has been a lot better. And I'm willing to say the 9 games in December when the juju was really bad are equally as meaningless as these 5 games. Like he's somewhere in the middle. He's not a 27-8 guy, but he's not the dude who shot the worst effective field goal percentage in the NBA on at least minimum 75 attempts in December. He's somewhere in between that, and my somewhere in between long-term quality NBA starter. I think you will end up in the same boat with small, undersized backcourt. That's a problem, but I still think you can build to the middle. And right now the Blazers don't have a path to be a contender, right? They got to build back to the middle for now and then figure out and then decide whether they tear it all the way down, right? They got to get back into the puncher's chance category, or the goal for this team, if they're not going to trade Dame, and they're not, get back into the puncher's chance category and then figure it out from there. And I don't think for where I'm at, I'd rather figure it out with Anfernee Simons on the roster than make a rash decision and not have him be part of the plan. I am definitely picking Ant over CJ right now because he'll be cheaper, he'll be younger, and the chance that his production is similar seems very, very high, if not guaranteed. That doesn't mean that CJ McCollum hasn't been good. It just means that I bet Ant can give you pretty much all of what CJ does with some real upside. He's 22 years old. That's your first mailbag question. This is the big thing. This could have been a whole show on Ants, but we did it. We'll just do 10, 12 minutes on it. I think that's the biggest question facing this team is Anfernee Simons looks like part of the future, but if the future looks like the past, is it worth it? I say yes, with the recognition that I'm not expecting crazy different results. I'll just admit it. I'm expecting a path back to 5th in the West, and Anfernee Simons seems to be a bridge back to 5th in the West. If that doesn't float your boat, fair enough. Let's come back in the second segment, answer more questions on Glorious Mailbag Monday. It's Mailbag Wednesday, special delivery. But before we get back on the special delivery mailbag, let me tell you about PrizePicks. It's the best DFS prop operator on the market. It's just a ton of fun. And they've got more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer superstar players, they offer end of the bench guys, and they've got props on everything. So points, assists, rebounds, threes made, fantasy points, whatever it is. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players and the over under on their projections. And you can win up to 10 times on an entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. No pros, no big field, no nothing. PrizePicks sets an over under. You pick which side your player is going to land on, and you get paid for it. Super fast to get signed up, super fast to get your money out once you do sign up. And right now, if you go to their website, prizepicks.com, or download their award-winning app, you can enter the promo code NBA when you are making your first deposit, and you get 100% instant match on up to $100. I've used PrizePicks. It's a ton of fun. I made some money betting on the college football playoffs and the Blazer game just this week, because you can combine sports, combine players, kind of combine your expertise, and you can win some money. So go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app. That's PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, let's keep it rolling on this special delivery mailbag. We're going to do the same kind of thing here in the second segment. Instead of answering a whole bunch of questions, we're going to kind of hit the big picture stuff this week in the mailbag world. We'll go back to rapid fire a whole bunch of questions in future mailbags. But today I wanted to hit the headlines because this is a big one, and things might change by the time we get to, we're in trade season. Things might change by the time we get sort of back to mailbag next week. So let's just go with a sort of a big old headline one. This one comes from Jeff V. As a reminder, this podcast very popular with Jeffs. Jeff V asks, theoretical. You're the GM of the Blazers, and it's the morning after the trade deadline. Within reason, what moves did you make to improve the Blazers? So many of you ask something like this. Many of you sent in trades that are just straight up illegal. Do not work under the collective bargaining agreement. Some of you sent trades that instead of just like being mean to you on the podcast and saying, why the hell would the Atlanta Hawks do this? I just decided I'd go this direction. Here's what I would do. If you're a longtime listener, you know that I don't love Trade Machine. I like the idea of trades. I like thinking about like sort of the theoretical, what would this team want? What would this team want? What I don't like is the like, you send me a theoretical trade that doesn't make sense, and I have to break down for you why it doesn't work, or you have to convince me why this other team would do it, but without considering the financial implications. Like the ins and outs are not what I love, but I love the theoretical trade stuff. So let's get into the sort of theoretical trade stuff, and I'll hit you with the specifics because I went to the trade machine and made it happen. Here's what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get Jeremy Grant on this team. I talked a little bit with Locked On Pistons host Koo Cahill about this, and Koo is kind of in the space where, Koo's a big Pistons fan and does a really good job in the Locked On Pistons podcast. So if you haven't listened, check it out. If Jeremy Grant's going to be traded, what is the Pistons' goals? And the Pistons' goals should be draft picks to continue the rebuild and young players that can be part of the rebuild. But the problem is that Jeremy Grant makes, $20 million a year. So you kind of got to figure out, make the money work on the other side. So the trade that I have cooked up with a little bit of help from Koo and a reminder from listener Jesse, who basically said the Blazers, the Blazers are going to have to give away young parts to make this happen because they don't have draft picks. So shout out to listener Jesse, who with the reminder on the Jeremy Grant trade is that I'm going to send CJ McCollum, that's Christian James McCollum, and Nassir Little to the Detroit Pistons for Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk. Olynyk is under contract for next season along with Grant. They're the big money contracts the Pistons have. You're giving Nassir Little, who I, Carolina guy, obviously really like and think can be a really good player. That's your upside. And in lieu of the pick, the Blazers really don't have to trade because they have a lottery protected pick owed to Chicago through 2028. They do not have a first round pick to really trade. This is instead of first round pick, Nassir Little under team contract for one more year, will be restricted free agent after that. And looks like he could be a really good, helpful player, but I'm swinging a little bigger and going for a veteran to help now. For my money today, Jeremy Grant has a busted thumb, but in the future, Jeremy Grant better than Nas like right now. Will he be better than Nas in 3 years? We'll see, but like better than Nas right now. So you're getting Jeremy Grant, you're getting some size back in Kelly Olynyk, and then you're moving on to the sort of next trade. And the next trade, if we're talking morning after the trade deadline, the next trade I've completed is I called up the Charlotte Hornets. And I gave them Jusuf Nurkic because they desperately need a center. And in return, we're getting some wings to help this Blazers roster. Kelly Oubre, PJ Washington will be the center of this deal. And to make the money work, they will also send over Ish Smith, who has a non-guaranteed contract for next year. And the Blazers will be sending out Jusuf Nurkic, Robert Covington, and Greg Brown to make the money work. Greg, this is just kind of the tough part of the league. He's not going to get a chance here in Portland in this theoretical trade world. For Nurk and Rocco, I guess if they get traded together, they become Nurko. But for Nurk and Rocco, Charlotte gets a look at them and they get to decide whether they're part of the future. Would Charlotte do this? Would they give up PJ Washington this trade? I think so, because I think Nurk and Rocco are enough of an upgrade defensively that they take that without kind of hurting the Hornets' future. They can pay Miles Bridges, et cetera, et cetera. You're not absorbing the Gordon Hayward or Terry Rozier deals, and so maybe that's a deal breaker. But let's just assume they say yes. You get Kelly Oubre, you get Ismish, you get PJ Washington. No draft picks are exchanged in this one. Here's what you're left with after the trade deadline: Damian Lillard, Norman Powell, Kelly Oubre, Jeremy Grant, Kelly Olynyk. Off the bench, Anfernee Simons, PJ Washington, Larry Nance, Ish Smith, non-guaranteed. Heading into next year, you would have as your top 8 Dame, Norm, Oubre, Grant, Olynyk, Ant, PJ Washington, Larry Nance. Boy, would you need a center. You'd get your lotto pick that you'd get to keep, because I'm going to assume you're not going to make the playoffs with trading for injured Jeremy Grant and Kelly Oubre. And losing Nurk. Like, you're going to be bad. This is a tank move, mini tank. you're going to next year with lottery pick and a whole bunch of minimum contracts to fill out the back half of the roster. But Dame, Norm, Oubre, Grant, Olynyk, Ant, Washington, Nance. I feel like that's a playoff 8. I don't love it. Admittedly, I don't love it, but I think going through this exercise is kind of like, this is the challenge. What teams would say yes to this? What teams specifically have a need for Nurk that you could get some value back? What teams would sort of take Rocco? I considered Christian Wood pretty heavily. I'm not a big Christian Wood believer. I do not care for the musical stylings of Christian Wood. I think he's talented. Not sure he's, I don't like him. I don't like him as a player. I just don't think he's that good. I know he can score. I will concede that. So I really started with Christian Wood and I ended up on Oubre and PJ Washington. Longtime listeners will know that I'm not really a Kelly Oubre guy either, but I somehow talked myself into it during this exercise. What do y'all think? I think that's kind of where I've landed on this one. That's my sort of theoretical, the moves I've made. I don't love the roster I've ended up with. I think the Blazers are still super thin up front. I think they're better defensively, but have they taken the real step? I still think you got to play a ton of minutes with Dame, Norm, and Ant just to have enough offense on the court. If Kelly Oubre, he's about a season-long heater in Charlotte, but if he shoots more like he did with the Warriors, that's a problem. So, like I said, I went through this exercise and I don't love where the Blazers came out on the other side. So if you have a better version of this, send it to me and I'll read it. Depending on timing wise, I'll share yours if you have a good one. If you have a bad one, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to keep it $150 with you. I read all the emails I get, but some of them I ignore. I'm just going to keep it $1 million. That is my fake trade deadline. That is my best try at it. If you've got a better one, please send it to me. Let's go into a little nonsense to close the show. Got a fun question to close the show. That's what we'll do on this glorious special delivery mailbag. But first, let's talk about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar that there is. That's what they're doing. They're making delicious protein bars. Every one of their bars, 17 to 18 grams of protein, 130 to 180 calories, 4 to 5 grams of sugar, no more than 5 grams of net carbs. And they got new flavors all the time. So if you're like me, you know what you like. Peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. I like the orange. I like the raspberry a little bit, like the mint brownie a little bit, like the salted caramel. I kind of mix it up in there, like the coconut and the coconut brownie chunk when it's available. Rocks. I've got my 5 or 6 that I mix and match. But if you don't know what you like, you can get a mix box, get a whole bunch of flavors, find out what you like, or just check built.com because they're coming out with new limited time flavors all the time. So you can try something new, see if you like that, change it up a little bit. Whatever you do, go to built.com, use a promo code LOCKED15 so you get 15% off whenever you're making your decision. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Today's show also brought to you by betonline.ag, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Whether you want to bet on the NFL playoffs, whether you want to bet on the NBA season, you'll find more props, more odds, more lines on all the games than they've ever had before, and pretty much than anywhere else you can find it. Plus, the NHL season, soccer all over the globe, combat sports. You can play your favorite Vegas casino games on betonline.ag. Don't wait. Take advantage of all these offers. Take advantage of this offer specifically. Go to BetOnline. And when you're making your first deposit, use a promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get a 50% welcome bonus. That's your first deposit. Promo code is locked on. You'll get a 50% welcome bonus. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. We are still going through a glorious special delivery mailbag. It is light on questions this week, but we're not light on fun or headlines. This is a question asked by several listeners. Ken was watching a game earlier this week in which contortionist Jonathan Burns caught his eye. If you have League Pass, I think NBA League Pass is kind of a crappy product. If you're from the league and you're listening to this, I think League Pass is kind of a crappy product. Y'all could do better with it. But if you buy the expensive one, you don't get commercials. You stay in arena, so you get to watch halftime acts, like a legitimate perk of League Pass. And listener Ken was watching League Pass this week and got to stay in arena and watch contortionist Jonathan Burns, a guy who was at the Blazer game. And his act includes like him kind of just like dislocating his arms or dislocating his shoulders and slipping through things like a toilet seat and a badminton racket and a picture frame. And it ends with him contorting himself into a rollaway suitcase and someone from the Blazers game op staff rolling him to the back. And he's got a real flair and was a ton of fun. And so Ken asked, like, where does Jonathan Burns rank among the halftime show entertainers? And Chris at Nevada Blazers fan on Twitter, Chris sent me an email and included his Twitter handle. Now, I don't know that we've had that before, but at Nevada Blazers fan on Twitter, Chris asked, like, what are the best halftime performances? And Chris singled out Chin Guy. It's actually Chin Balancer, Chris, but I'll give you a pass. Chin Balancer was another one who came through the Blazers through the Moda Center at a Blazer game earlier this year. And Chin Balancer literally just balances stuff on his chin. Starts with like bouncing like a rake and maybe like a pool cue and a mop or something. And then he bounces a table and then an umbrella and then a lawnmower and then multiple ladders. And then he climbs up a ladder and balances a ladder, like right on the, if you're watching on YouTube, like right on the edge of his chin. It's incredible. It's incredible. And so Chris said, like, what are your, noting that it was a second person possessive pronoun, favorite halftime performances? So here, let's rank them. The Blazers season has been like legitimately kind of a bummer at times this year. And there's been games where just like the halftime performance is the highlights, or the halftime performance is the first time the crowd cheers, because the first half is just kind of like on Sunday, the Blazers played the Kings. Ugly, gross basketball game in the first half. And then Jonathan Burns comes out and the crowd goes nuts. Like, people are going wild and people are excited. And I was like, okay, a lot of people have asked about them. Actually, that wasn't Jonathan Burns. Burns was last week, but a lot of people have asked about, halftime acts. Let's talk about it, because it's like, it's becoming more of a part of the Blazers season as kind of like the results of the basketball games matter a little bit less, and eventually will matter probably not at all. So here are my personal favorites. My all-time favorite is Red Panda. She's a gamer. She is the performer, or Red Panda is a performer who rides the unicycle and flips bowls from foot to head. And so Red Panda bounces bowls, kind of alternates up, down on the bowls, so there's a little bit of flair, and then flips them from shin and catches them on her head. She rocks. She's an all-time great performer. She tore her ACL a couple of years ago, and like, I'm just going to keep it a buck. I'm honest with athletes. I'll be honest with her. An athlete, she's not as good since she got hurt. Age sucks. And Red Panda would never make mistakes. And now when you see her, sometimes she screws up in her act, because your body has a limited window to be an elite athlete. And Red Panda for a decade was one of the elites, still my all-time fave. Also on that list, Christian Scooby. Christian is like a, I was going to say gymnast, but kind of like does some balancing and some strength stuff, and then brings out a small Chihuahua, and the Chihuahua does tricks along with Christian. I didn't love Christian and Scooby the first time I saw the act, but I have grown to love it. And Christian and Scooby kills in the arena, and that has to be part of this. Kills in the arena. Christian and Scooby, always a winner. I'm going to just say all these names, and so literally they're all available on YouTube. If you're not familiar with them, go down the YouTube rabbit hole, have some fun here. I think number 3 on this list has to be the Amazing Sladek, or Amazing Sladek. I think it's the Amazing Sladek, Sladek. Sladek is an older fella. He's probably like in his middle 60s, older for the circuit, but like older for doing halftime acts as a job. But Sladek is the great balancing act. And he puts down a table, and then he stacks chairs, and he climbs to the top of the chairs. But Sladek's like specialty, what makes it so good, is first of all, sequin outfit, low cut sequin outfit, like real circus performer outfit, and incredible flair, true performer flair to the music plays. And Sladek like plays up the crowd and puts his arms out real high and plays with the music, like true performer. Really one of the great halftime acts. Has to be 3rd on my list. 4th on my list is something they don't do anymore, like post-COVID, which, like, for obvious reasons, but baby races kick ass. I've been trying to get Todd Bosma, the Blazers MC, at the arena to do baby races for like 5 years. I've been fighting the good fight. And I guess maybe there's not a lot of racing babies in the Portland area, but like this happens all over the league where they put carpet out and you bring your toddler and your toddler crawls to the end of the carpet and races another toddler on the other carpet who's also crawling, and it rocks. People love races. Races are good, and baby races rock. Like baby races really was one of the best halftime acts. It's easy to get involved. Toddlers are great. Hijinks ensue because a kid just does its own thing and kind of freestyles, or some baby is super fast. You see a super fast baby at the arena, you've had a couple beers, you're going nuts. If you're me on press row, I've actually never seen it in real life, but I've seen on my couch plenty of times, and I love it. Shout out to baby races. So I think those are my top 4. I think 5 is Chin Guy. Like I really do think the Chin Balancer is new on the scene. No one I talked to a bunch of Blazers employees about this, getting their take. They can remain anonymous, but I talked to a bunch of Blazers employees, including Todd, about their favorite in-arena entertainment. And we all agree that Chin Balancer is hot and going to be like a rising star in the halftime entertainment game. Chin Balancer, again, bounces stuff on his chin. He could use a little Sladek's flair. Chin Balancer, if you're listening, love your act, but I think you need that performer's flair, and you'll get it because you're going to get reps all over this fine country. And probably in Canada too, when that's easier to travel there. It's not easy to get a Chin Balancer across the border these days, but when you're able to travel throughout North America, you'll be a hit all over this fine continent. I think Jonathan Burns, the contortionist, deserves a mention here. Real flair, goofy, kind of a Napoleon Dynamite vibes, but a little just like absurdist and really fun. And like, fitting yourself through a toilet seat as the opener of your act, incredible. That's going to get the people talking. Before Jonathan Burns gets into the suitcase, he also takes off a pair of tighty whities. It's just, you will not forget it when you see it. And that has to be up there. We're still talking about it here, right? There's also a woman who's Itzel Salvatierra, I believe is how you play it. Itzel, Itzel Salvatierra, who does aerials. It's like, aerial acrobatics. There's like silks suspended from the big screen at the Blazers arena, and she goes up there and spins around in like a suspended sort of circle and does like really cool aerial acrobatics. Sweet. Sophie Dosey does archery with her feet. Rocks, very fun. I've seen 2 different people do this, but it's one woman who rolls around in like a big circle and does like kind of like this sort of gyroscope balancing act. Don't love that one. A little dizzy for me. Other acts that aren't on my list, but you'll see Rolla Bola, which is like a couple who is a sort of acrobat couple, and they do balancing and they do strength stuff and they wear fun sort of circus outfits. Quick Change, the man from Quick Change passed away in 2019, but they were an act that changed outfits a bunch. Very fun. Steve Max is a professional Simon Says performer, and David Giribaldi is a speed painter. All of them deserve shout outs here. But I think my top 5 are Red Panda, The Amazing Sladek, Christian Scooby, Baby Races, and the Chin Balancer. Those are my top 5. Listen, this Blazer season needs fun. The halftime acts have been fun. If you have a halftime act you prefer, shoot it to me. We'll get back to more regularly scheduled mailbags in the future. Yeah, I spent 9 minutes on halftime acts. It's time to have it's the middle of the week, baby. This is a special delivery mailbag. We'll have more serious shows later this week, but I wanted to have a little bit of joy in this one. And we talk trades, we talk dance, then we got a little nonsense. So thanks for sticking with me through the nonsense. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag, at Mike G. Rich on Twitter, email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. More shows this week, more games. Blazers play the Nuggets to begin a road trip. Probably going to have an interview later this week, so make sure you stick around for that one. Don't want to tease it because I haven't got it confirmed. But 5 shows every day of the week, each weekday, a new Locked On Blazers. So tell your friends, come back for more. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.